welcome to the NJBIA Women Business Leaders Council meeting presented by PSE&G. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give everyone a few seconds to migrate in from the waiting room. As you make your way in, please mute yourself and switch your view from gallery to speaker. If you're not sure how to do that, the team will post some directions in the chat feature. Just a quick reminder that this program is being recorded and you are all muted for the duration, with the exception of if you have a question. We want this to be a little bit interactive. So to kick things off, I will now pass it to one of our council leaders, Lorena Mosquera. Lorena, take it away.
Morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Kate said, my name is Lorena Mosquera, and I am the workflow strategist at Paradigm Marketing and Design. And I am one of the council leaders of NJBIA's Women's Business Leaders Council. We're so glad you could make it to this month's Women's Business Leaders Council meeting. That's like a tongue twister to say really fast, but just a quick reminder that we are recording this event. Big shout out to my co-chairs for 2023. We've got Sally Joe, who's the Director of Coaching of the Human Emergence Group, and Stephanie Staub, who is the Director of Infrastructure and Energy Strategy and Workforce Partnership of the New Jersey Community Colleges Consortium. Danielle, I believe there you go. You've already got that up there. Thank you. I'd also like to present our presenting sponsor, PSE&G, and all of our other sponsors, including our sustaining partner, NJ Manufacturers Insurance Group, our platinum partner, Prime Point HRMS and Payroll, our business roundtable partner, CGI, and our event partner, Association Member Trust. We're going to incorporate some networking into this event as we get closer to the end so that you can take advantage of the wonderful women that are attending in this event, and sometimes occasionally men. And we'll make sure we give you a networking question as well. And with that, I'm going to toss the baton back over to NJBIA.
Thank you so much. We at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association are thrilled that this group continues to grow and thrive under the leadership of such amazing women. For those of you who are new to NJBIA, we are the largest statewide business association in the country, representing approximately 1 million jobs in the state of New Jersey, which amounts to about 1/4 of New Jersey's workforce, offering customer development opportunities, visibility through events, magazine ads, or our podcast and TV shows, and money-saving discounts on stuff you're probably already paying for, like payroll, healthcare, a 401k solution, and HR support. If you're interested in more info on us, I'll drop the website into the chat along with my contact info. Please feel free to be in touch and we can get you whatever you need. And as an FYI, we've created a Women Business Leaders Council group on LinkedIn. I will drop the link for that into the chat as well, and hopefully that'll be a place where we can continue to network and learn and grow. I am Kate Conroy, and that's all for me. So now I will toss it back to the fabulous Lorena Mosquera.
You are so kind. It is now my pleasure to reintroduce Sally Joe O'Brien. Sally Joe is a leadership consultant and a certified Dare to Lead facilitator. Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with that, but that is Brene Brown's program, which I absolutely love. With over 25 years of experience as a resiliency, transition, and mental fitness expert, she is also a certified grief educator focusing on grief in the workplace. As Director of Executive Coaching at the Human Emergence Group, Sally Joe supports leaders and teams, equipping them with the 21st century toolbox required to bring courageous leadership to life in their organizations. She focuses on growing our capacity to lead the brave conversations that pave the way for successful business outcomes. Sally Joe is an advocate for co-creating positive workplaces where truth, curiosity, resilience, and humor are both valued and rewarded. She and her family live in New Jersey. And with that, I present you Sally Joe.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you. Awesome intro. I appreciate that. And I'm so happy to be here. And I'm happy to be here for my very first year working with the NJBIA. It's just great. And so when I was asked to present, I thought, there's so many topics in Brene Brown's Daring Leadership work. But one of the biggest things that's been coming up with my coaching clients, with myself personally, and with everybody is how to have boundaries. Excuse me, have boundaries. So, so what I wanted to do was kind of just talk a little bit about what Brene Brown's work is. We'll have a little bit of an interactive slide presentation, show a video, and we'll be talking to each other about what boundaries we'd like to have in place so that we can show up fully and have a really productive, grounded, happy year and not be frenetic as we often have been as the year begins and coming out of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things about Brené's work, and I'm going to share my screen in a second, is for those of you who don't know Brené Brown, she's a research professor at the University of Houston. She's a PhD in social work, and she's spent the last 20 some years researching vulnerability, shame, and courage. And it's probably a good time to share my screen right now. I'm going to do that. And let me see here. Whoops. One second. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so so kind of in light of Valentine's Day, I thought I would show this first slide is about courage being a heart word, and I don't know if those of you who know if you know the origin of the word courage, but it means to tell one's story with one's whole heart. So, which I love. So it's the idea of courage is different than like bravery, running into a building. It's about vulnerability. And so that's what Brené Brown's work is. And when I first was introduced to her work in 2010, it was through a book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And here, and I'm gonna go right to here. I'm going to go back. So, and the gifts of, so there's something imperfect right there. It's permission to be imperfect. And I didn't realize like how hard on myself I was being until I read that book. And so it's helped me to learn to live more wholeheartedly. And then I dug into her work, became certified in her early work. And now as an executive coach and a leadership development professional, her work evolved from the work we did in 2010 up until 2019, when she came out with a book called Dare to Lead and a curriculum for Dare to Lead. And Dare to Lead was a culmination of all of Brené's work, which was, I'm going to skip right here. All of this work, and can you see this? So it became a culmination of studying what does it mean to show up, be vulnerable, be imperfect, and still be grounded and confident in the way that we lead. So if you traced, we're going to be exploring Dare to Lead, but if you traced her work back, I thought it was just me, but it isn't. That was about women and shame and how shame shows up in our life, and now in the Dare to Lead work, how it shows up in the workplace. A super interesting, loaded, and rich topic that we could explore at another time as well. So then the Gifts of Imperfection was how to let go of being imperfect and be authentic, vulnerable, and live a wholehearted life. Then Daring Greatly was really like, where do you want to be courageous? Where do you want to step into the arena? How do you want to show up in your life? And then Rising Strong was, okay, when you show up in the arena and you like be brave with your life, you're going to get your butt kicked. And so how do you get up from that? So it's a resiliency process, Rising Strong. She wrote another book called Braving the Wilderness. It's one of my favorite books. It didn't get as much press, but it's about belonging. So it's got so much to do with creating courageous cultures now of belonging, inclusivity. There's so much richness in there for those of us who do DEI work formally in our organizations, or those who, of course, support inclusivity at work and in our everyday work and dealings. And then Dare to Lead, which is what we're going to dig into today. One exercise from that You Are Your Own Best Thing is also is a DEI book that she did with the amazing Tarana Burke, worth checking out. And then Atlas of the Heart is Brené's most recent book. And that is about your emotions. And it's not just the 5 emotions of fear, sadness, anger, joy, and I can't think of the last one for a second. There's 88 emotions. And so it's about like the nuance, you know, if I'm frustrated, anger. If I'm frustrated, am I angry? No, I'm frustrated. So it's like the nuances of emotions and how they play out in the way we show up as leaders in our work and in our communities. So yeah, so be you was the first part, be all in, fall, get up, try again, and then the more recent hard conversations. So this is I don't know if you guys know about Jamboard, but this is kind of a funky Google tool, and I just wanted to do my presentation on it. So it's something you can know about because it's a way to be a little bit interactive. So this is Dare to Lead. This is the curriculum that the Living Big process, which is about having boundaries, is what we're drawing from today. So the premise is, you know, who we are is how we lead. How we show up is how we are as a leader. And we want to show up, obviously, as confident, grounded, authentic, courageous, brave, competent, all the things. And the idea is that when we're brave with our work and we are courageous and brave with our lives, we're going to piss people off, and we're going to have to learn how to disappoint people and still be true to ourselves. So one of the first things that, and I don't know how many people are here, even if we can do shout outs for this, but one of the things that I like to do in a workshop is, and this is kind of a workshop tool, is to kind of lean in and say, okay, what am I giving myself permission to do here, to do this work? What do I need personally to show up so that I can really be fully here and present to do like a little bit of funky hard work. It's a vulnerable process to dig into some kind of personal development to facilitate our leadership development. So these are these are the things that people most often will say that they need permission. They need permission to, does anybody have anything they want to say? Like I usually put in permission to mess up the tech because there's always something, but so it's like, you know, I need permission. I need to give myself permission to make a mistake and to forgive myself so that I can be here and not, you know, go down some rabbit hole of beating myself up, you know. So if there's anybody want to add anything to these, just jump in. I don't know if we're on mute, but all right. If not, we're going to go to the next frame. So the force, so in Brené's work, we are studying the 4 skill sets of courage. And since 2019, Brené took all of her prior work and she went like to 150 leaders globally to ask, you know, what does it mean to be a courageous leader? Or, you know, what like she did all this research on leadership is what I should say. And what saturated across 100%, which is kind of unheard of across the data, is that every single global leader, and she's surveyed more than 150 of them and interviewed them and done her research with them over the years since 2019, is that we need more courageous leaders. And so it's like, okay, well, that's great. What is it, you know, how do you become more courageous? People thought, oh, you're born with courage. You know, it's just a thing you have and you can't, you know, it's a static set of skills. But what the good news is that the research shows that there really are actually 4 skill sets of courage, and they're rumbling with vulnerability, which is a rumble, like kind of getting in there and, you know, us Jersey girls, you know, like um, just getting into the deep conversation about whatever it is, and that's a vulnerable place to be. So learning how to be vulnerable, rumbling with vulnerability, living into our values, using our values as a way, being super clear about what are our values and how do we use them to make decisions, to enter into hard conversations. How do we align with, how do we know, like, if we know what our top 2 values are, which there's many values, but usually in this work, we'll attempt to pick like 2. Am I leading with them? Am I out of alignment with them? Is this work that I'm doing stepping on my values? Usually, especially in coaching conversations or in team meetings, you can feel like if things are really off, it's usually because there's a value that I hold dear that is being stepped on. And so it feels, wonky. And so that's living into our values. Braving trust, we're going to do that in a second, but Braving trust is an acronym that we're going to dig into in a second, but it's about boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, which is keeping it in the vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So we're going to be digging into a part of braving trust, which is a really big exercise to do with teams in this work. And then learning to rising skills. How do you get back up after you've had a crappy meeting, or somebody looked at you sideways and you didn't realize, you took it the wrong way? How do you be resilient? So they're resiliency skills. So in this work, barriers to courage and to being brave are often, how do we have tough conversations, being really understanding how our fears are getting in the way, how learning to deal with our emotions so they don't derail us and take us off track and get in the way of being clear and grounded. Eroding trust, things that keep trust from showing up in our leadership and in our teams. And being in the past, getting stuck in our setbacks, lack of innovation is usually about, is often about safety, like a commitment to being safe versus a commitment to, moving forward. Having a problem-solving bias versus an action-taking bias is another barrier to courage. All the inclusivity, diversity, equity, inclusion, all those issues can be barriers to being braver at work. Shame, blame, that's a whole big topic. Having what she calls gauzy values, like, yeah, we rock, instead of how do we have, what does authenticity mean if that's one of our values? How does that actually show up in a meeting, in an operationalized way? How do we operationalize our values? And then my number one, and I don't know about anybody else, is perfectionism. Perfectionism is definitely, I would say, the place that Brené's work has helped me the most, and the place where I still have the longest way to go, for sure. So is any of this resonating with anybody? I can only see, I'm seeing some shaking heads. So, and we're going to get to do some work together in a second. I'm going to stop talking in a second. So here's this braving acronym. And this is a big piece of the Dare to Lead curriculum, which I forgot to mention is it's a 24-hour curriculum, which I often pull pieces out of, like we're doing here today. But it's a curriculum to teach you to be a more courageous leader. And one big part of it, especially with teams, is this braving acronym: boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So we are going to dig into the part of braving, which is setting boundaries. And I'm guessing if you showed up for the workshop, you were either would love some tips on how to set more clear boundaries, or you're a champ and you just want to see what everybody else is doing. I know that I'm not. And boundaries are, we're going to watch a video, and after we do an exercise in a second, and Brené's going to talk about boundaries. But I used to think of boundaries as like the wall I have to put up to keep everybody out so that I can, whatever, be strong. But what it turns out that I've learned is that, I'm going to go here for a second, is that boundaries are really about being clear. And in this work, we say that clear is kind, and that unclear is unkind. And so when you are learning to be clear with somebody, there's ways to do it, which we're going to talk about, but it's not really nice or kind to not be telling the truth or not be setting what's okay with you. So simply put, boundaries are what's okay and what's not okay. So like, it's okay for you to be late for our dinner engagement. It's not okay for you to not let me know. It's that sort, not call and let me know. It can be as simple as that. It's okay if you need to be checking on your family during the meeting on your phone. It's not okay. It's okay for you to be checking on your family. It's not okay for you to be doing it during the meeting. It's like, I'm seeing some shaking heads. So it's a way to be like, it's not judgy. It's just like getting clear what's okay, what's not okay. That was like super helpful to me because I thought I had to like, be this person, whatever, really tough or really confrontational. And it's a way to kind of take the energy out of it by getting clear on what's important to you. So the living big process is a way to set boundaries about what's okay and what's not okay. So, and we're going to do it in a couple minutes. So this boundaries idea is that you respect my boundaries. And when you're not clear about what's okay and what's not okay, you're going to ask. And you're also going to be, we're both going to be willing to say, no, that doesn't work. An example of that is, I have a client who has a parent who's kind of a rageaholic, right? And so what happens is that, so we worked on, and this could happen in a meeting too. It's okay for you to be angry. It's not okay for you to scream in a meeting. It's okay for you to be angry. It's not okay for you to make a scene in a restaurant. That's not okay, right? So that's one example of that. And then integrity is this thing of, it's like, I used to think of integrity as like this hammer, of like a weapon. Am I integrity? Am I not integrity? And not in integrity. Doing it like being this like super moral person, so to speak, that has everything lined up and is living life, correctly. But really, what I've learned from this work, and I hope you'll take this to heart, it's really, you're choosing courage over comfort. Like choosing right now, like what's right over what's fun or fast or easy. And then for you, whatever your values are, that you choose to profess them rather than, practice them rather than profess them. So like, I have my current working two values are curiosity, top ones, curiosity and courage. Okay, so I'm going to say curiosity and growing, because courage is kind of like the work I do, right? But so curiosity and courage, curiosity and what did I just say?
You said curiosity and
growth. Curiosity and growth, right? So it's super easy for me. I'm going to pick traffic because it's an easy, but it could also be a meeting. Somebody looks at me a certain way in a meeting, or they seem annoyed, or they roll their eyes, or they walk out early, or whatever. I could be my go-to. The way my go-to is judge. I'm a judger, right? So, but the way to if I'm really leaning in to my value of curiosity, I can mitigate that judgment by saying, I wonder what's going on for her. I can say the story I'm making up, like in a, later with that person, is the story I'm making up is that you were really annoyed with me in that meeting, or you thought my idea was wrong. So often that person will say, no, that is nothing. It had nothing to do with you. I was thinking about taking my mother to the doctor later. And it was really like, that's what was on my mind. Sorry, I wasn't present. It had nothing to do with you. Or, oh my gosh, that triggered a whole thing of something I have to do that I know I have to do more research on. So it's, it's that kind of thing. So that's choosing courage over comfort and leaning into your values, which is a courageous thing to do because they're your values, And then the big one, generosity, how do you extend the most generous interpretation possible to the intentions, the words, and the actions of other people? So, we're going to be asking this big question and you can start to hold it in your consciousness, is like, are people doing the best they can? Are people doing the best they can? And what does that mean when you assume yes and when you assume no? What does that do for you, so to speak? And so what does this have to do with boundaries? If somebody's doing if somebody does something really obnoxious or rude or something I find really offensive, are they just trying to get piss me off? Are they trying to get at me? Or is this person doing the best they can in this moment, in their current emotional state, with the skills that they have? Which doesn't mean that people aren't held accountable. It's just a way of being that helps us be less judgmental, so that we can kind of get on with it and get stuff done. I'm blabbing a lot, but is this making sense? I'm seeing some heads.
Total sense.
Total sense. Okay, cool. So we're gonna, we could go to breakout, or I don't know, how many people do we have here? 21. Okay. We could go to breakouts or actually, let's do this. In your mind, and hopefully you have a piece of paper, I'm going to ask everybody, we'll go to breakouts after the video. Okay, so we're going to ask everybody to think about somebody. Well, first of all, let's do this. The question is, do you believe that people are doing the best that they can? And so that's your fundamental, and whatever the answer is, it's 100% fine, right? Do you think people are doing the best they can? So that's kind of a yes or no ish question. Often people, I don't know, how many people think yes? I'm just curious. I could have done a poll here, but I can't see everybody else. But are there a bunch of yeses?
Yeah, you've got a few yeses coming in. A lot of people have their videos off for some reason, and that's okay. But I think, I'm working off the chat for you, and yeah, I think there's a lot of yeses.
And how about no? How many people think people are really not doing the best they can? And I'll say that I was not only a no, I was a hell no before this work. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Think of a person that you constantly find yourself judging. And it could be at work or it could be at home, but somebody whose choices or values or their behavior, somebody that you find, something that you find annoying or unacceptable. And so think of that person and think of the behaviors and think about what is driving your judgment of that person. So you're going to hold on to that. And then ask yourself, what would it mean for you? Not for them, like if they shaped up, but what would it mean for you if you were assuming that they're doing the very best that they can? So that's That's the thing to hold. And then we're going to listen to Renee, and I'm going to show a video. And let's see here, make sure it goes. Okay, good. I'm going to cue this up. We're going to watch Brene, and after we listen to this, then we'll circle back and do another exercise and a little bit of a breakout. Okay, ready for movie time? Here we go. Grab your coffee.
Got to tell you this
Can
one,
you hear
there
it?
is just very
wait.
few things.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. Living big. There we go.
So you've just answered some questions in the Living Big exercise. And I got to tell you this one, there is just very few things that we do that makes people crunchier and more pissed off than this exercise. This whole question of, do you believe people are doing the best they can? It is such a tough question. And I was a hardcore no. I was like, hell no, people are not doing the best they can. No, 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 no. And when I first started doing this research and I started asking people, it was really interesting because not only was I a no, people are not doing the best they can, everyone that I hung out with, when I asked them this question, were like, no, What was interesting is the people who said, you know what, I really kind of believe people are doing the best they can, were almost, the two things that were surprising to me is the people who said yes were almost apologetic. Like, yeah, I know it's a little bit naive, I'm sorry, but I kind of believe people are doing the best they can. And the people that were no, people are not doing the best they can, were like, they were not ambivalent. They were like, hell no, people suck in general and they're not doing the best they can. And I asked Steve, I said, do you think people are doing the best they can? And he said, I don't know, I have to think about that. And he's a pediatrician, and he has a weird practice because 70% of his patients are the children of physicians and nurses, and he does all of his own hospital work. So he sees a lot of hard things. And about 10 minutes later, he said, yeah, I don't know. And I said, you don't know, right? And he goes, no, I don't know whether they're actually doing the best they can. I just know my life is better when I assume people are doing the best they can. And I thought that was such a powerful answer. As I went through the research, what I learned is that the people who said no, the people are not.
Sally, you have to unmute yourself because we can't hear you.
Themselves, and people who believe that people were doing the best they could seem to be kinder and gentler with themselves and other people. They didn't strive for excellence any less than those people, but they definitely approached the world in a different way. And I'll tell you one more story about this because it's a really important concept, this idea of big. What boundaries need to be in place for me to be in my integrity and be generous toward other people, to live big, to assume the best, most generous thing I can about other people. I was doing a retreat with Episcopal deacons in West Texas. And I asked them, just like we asked you, to write down the initials of someone who really just, you believed, just made you crazy and you had a lot of judgment toward. And there was a couple there, both deacons, both in their 70s. They were in rural West Texas. They would drive hundreds of miles to bury people and marry people and baptize people, not a lot of priests in those areas. And they both wrote down the initials of the same person. And it was a guy that was living like kind of in extreme poverty. CPS had threatened to take his kids away 100 times. He would use the money he would get from the state to gamble. They would bring food. He would sell the food for gambling money. It was just, and they both wrote down that name. And so when it came to their turn, I said, what if, and I could use God in this instance because they were Episcopal deacons. I said, what if God came down and said, let's say this guy's name is John. John is actually doing the best he can with what he has right now in this moment. What would you do differently? And they both burst into tears. And the man said, I would either stop helping him or I would keep helping him and stop judging him. And there's this idea of when we don't believe people are doing the best they can, we give ourselves permission to shame and cajole and push. I did the same exercise at West Point. I remember the man saying, ma'am, are you sure the intel's good? Are you sure that this person's doing the best they can? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. Let's just pretend like suspend disbelief. I'm sure. And he said, I got to move the rock, ma'am. I'll never forget it because I say it to myself all the time. I said, what does that mean? He goes, if this person's actually doing the best he can, I've got to move the rock. Every day I come to work, I punch the rock, I kick the rock, I shame the rock, but I got to move the rock. He's in the wrong job. If he's doing the best he can, I got to stop giving him such hell and grief every day and find another way for him to contribute. The question always becomes what boundaries need to be in place for us to be in our integrity and extend the most generous hypothesis towards people's thoughts, words, and deeds. This is a really hard exercise. You can choose to dig in and believe, you can choose not to. But I'm gonna come down at the end of the data with what Steve said, is that I'm not sure whether people are doing the best they can every day. I choose to believe it because it makes my life better and it makes me a better leader. And it doesn't mean that I have fewer hard conversations. It means I have more. Because when we pretend that people are pissing us off on purpose or just lazy or not working, it gives us permission to be angry and sidestep the hard conversation. We kick the rock, we don't move the rock.
What'd you think?
Anything she does or talks about is always captivating and great, in my opinion.
Any thoughts on that before we go into the little hard breakout section of this? How much time do we have? We have a couple minutes. Okay. Yeah. Anybody have anything they want to weigh in on before we?
I think that she really gives us a lot to really think about, right? I mean, like not being judgy and really believing, but I agree with her. And I look at the difference between how I look at things and people and how my husband does. And my husband 100% has that attitude. And she is right. When you accept and believe the best in people, it enriches your own life 100%. But it's hard to do. It is really, really hard to do. And it's a great challenge to present to all of us to do, right? To do better, to work towards that every day.
Yeah, it's courageous. It's vulnerable. Yeah. Anybody else?
And I tell my daughter all the time, like, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what your boundaries are if you don't say them. And I think we have to do the same thing. Like, we need to tell people what the boundaries are because they're not going to know it for us. Like, we have to be able to do the uncomfortable and say what we want so that maybe they can then stop and pause and be like, oh, that's what you were talking about, or that's what you meant.
Yeah. What's okay? What's not okay?
And it changes the judgment zone factor too.
Yeah. Anybody else from the? So we'll go into breakouts in a second, but one of the things I share often with coaching clients and with myself, I have to do it all the time, is that it's really hard for me, who's a dyed-in-the-wool judger. I grew up in a judgy household. I grew up in a judgy environment. Like, that's just, and I probably just came out of the womb, perfectionistic and judgy. So it's really hard for me to get to compassion toward other people, but most difficult to have self-compassion, which is a whole other workshop that we could talk about. But self-compassion is like so helpful, but I can't get there. I super can't get there. Like, I can't just go from, oh, Sally, you're being judgy, get to be compassionate. So I learned a long time ago that the bridge between judgment and compassion, or self-compassion especially, is curiosity. And curiosity is your superpower. Curiosity is your friend. And if you can say, like, holy cow, why did I just snap at that person? What's going on with me right now? What's up with that? Oh, you didn't sleep. Oh, soon as they did their presentation, you realized that you were feeling incompetent, or that, whatever. Somebody, joins something and they have 8 million certifications and you don't. And I feel what, it's just all the things. There's so many things that can, if we're curious about them, it can give you a place to land before going into judgment, which is it as we all know it, it hijacks the ability to collaborate, to co-create, to bring out the best of ourselves. It hijacks your brain, all those things. So Yeah, so that bridge, that golden bridge of curiosity between judgment and self-compassion and compassion. So right now, I don't know how many people are still here, but we could go into breakout room. And the question that I just love everybody to take to have a little discussion with is what boundaries do you need to have in place so that you can work from a place of integrity and assume the most generous interpretation of the other person's intentions and words and deeds. And think of that person who you were just talking about, or if somebody else is now came to mind, that's fine to switch. This is your work. But to just say, okay, what would be helpful to me, whether it be at work or at home, but most of us, we're talking about work here, that would help us be live big, so to speak. So yeah.
We are going to go into breakout rooms now. And for those of you that are here, when we go into breakout rooms, the purpose of the breakout room is to kind of leverage the great information that Sally Jo has just given us, as well as to network. And so it's really important that we take some of these tidbits that were given to us today, which I think are wonderful. I mean, if you have not read the Brene Brown books, or followed her podcasts, I mean, they're worthwhile. So Sally Jo could definitely be a resource for you to learn more about that. But I think one of the biggest ones was Atlas of the Heart, because it's like a dictionary for what you're feeling. You literally open it up and go, oh, I'm feeling this. Oh, but that's not really what I'm feeling. That's really because of this. Kind of makes you feel really seen. And their HBO special on it was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
So definitely, if you have questions on that, reach out to Sally Jo, because it is a great tool to put underneath our little arsenal of tools that we need to have. So when we go into the networking group, just keep that in mind when you're having a dialogue and talking about your business. It's important to not only show up for these events, but it's also important to be sure you follow up with folks after the event. It's what you do with these connections that really cultivates the act of giving and receiving. So please make sure you follow up if you want to do one-to-one, connect, and make sure that you have their contact information. If you haven't put your information in the chat, just know that that does disappear when you go into the breakout rooms. It will appear when you come back. If you have updated your latest Zoom, it'll automatically download for you so that you have it as a file with all your information. If not, just make sure you click on the 3 little dots in the chat. You'll be able to pull all that information. With that, we are going to go into the breakout room. So unless anyone has any questions, raise your hands, put it on the chat. No, we're good. Okay, we're going to go into the breakout rooms, and we allow for about 15 minutes. So normally it's going to be about 3 to 4 people in each room. So just allow for 3 to 4 minutes per person. Share again the boundary question that Sally Jo gave. What is it that you need to have as a boundary in order to live out to the most you that you can be, and we will come back to that after that. And we love that you are here, and we hope to see you next month. With that, I'm going to do the breakout rooms, and we will have about, like I said, 3 to 4 participants in each room. And that room should be now open.